Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. You are on the sidelines with the sideline guys. And of course, I have returned once again. And our reward for being absolute failed parents. I like to think of ourselves as helicopter parents typically. But we have absolutely abandoned our children in the back of a firehouse. It was not the front step, it was the back door. But it's okay. Our punishment is returning back to the sideline guys with the UFC Hellscape show, right? There's no better punishment for where we've been, right, than returning in this way. So, Sean, I gotta ask, how pumped are you to talk about this card on a scale of 1 to 10?
Oh my god, dude! I think this is the card I've been circling on the calendar all year long. Especially when I saw Gilbert Burns' main event in 2025, I was like, man, there's nothing better than that. Especially when you start a card off with Tecia Pennington. I honestly don't know if it could get much better than this. This is probably the highest of highs. I don't even know if we should really even consider doing another episode for a couple weeks because this episode is going to top them all. I think this is the one that peaks for all of us here at the sideline guys.
Hey, I love that sentiment too because shit, if past this prologue, we might show up in another 4 weeks this time. Who the fuck knows? But I'm so happy to be back with my guy. You already know that means we're back discussing all things MMA, every single fight on the card as always. But before we continue that, it's only right that we remind you guys what the hell we got going on over here. So make sure you're following the brand at OTS Media Co. on all social media platforms. OTS Media on YouTube, so you never miss all of the dope stuff that we've got coming your way. It's been really cool to see the response from all of the draft content that we've been putting out pre and post NFL draft in 2025. So make sure you're locked in so you get to see how we felt about your team's draft picks and where their selections were. Make sure you tune in for those shows, and you could do that at OTS Media Co. But with the pleasantries out the way, catch me at Negron MMA on Twitter and TikTok and Instagram, Chris Negron _ Sean, where can the people find you?
You can't find me anywhere except for bsreports.org. That's the only social media I guess I have. It's my own website for any of you sports writers out there that want to get started in the sports world. Uh, my email is there. Shoot me a shout, and I will help you get started in the sports writing world.
You heard the man. BS Reports for all of your sports content. But with all of the fun stuff out of the way, I got to remind the people, man, this has been one hell of a year for me, just getting my ass whooped. You know what I'm saying? But I do feel that I'm scratching and clawing, right? I'm doing everything I can to make my way back. But with that sentiment out the way, the standings are as follows. For head to head, I'm sitting at 125 wins, 70 losses, one draw for a win percentage of 64.03, while Sean is sitting at 126 wins, 69 losses, one draw for a win percentage of 64.54%. You heard that right. We pick every single fight of the calendar year so far. And as of yet, Sean is winning by one win. So once again, if that doesn't speak to how much we know what we're talking about, ladies and gentlemen, say whatever you want. God damn, I don't know what will. Next on, we move up to Dynasty. Last week, I went 6-3 at UFC 315, bringing my 2025 total to 56 wins, 46 losses for a win percentage of 54.9, up 1 percentage from last week, while Sean is sitting at an absolutely absurd. Shout out to you, man. Like every time I try to look at the doc, honestly, every time I try to look at the doc, I get hyped up because I'm like, you know what? This week I did better than him, right? Like I gotta be inching, but you've had an astronomical 2025 that has absolutely put you out ahead and absolutely took away the lead that I had from previous years, right? So much respect to you in this 2025, but I still did better than you last week, bitch. You went 6-4, 70 wins, 39 losses for a win percentage of 64.22% in Dynasty. And now head-to-head all-time Dynasty standings, which is always fun to review. It's getting close. It's getting close. But the standings is as follows: 251 wins, 163 losses, 3 draws, 4 no contests for me, for a win percentage of 60.45, while Sean is sitting at 264 wins, 159 losses, 1 draw, and 3 no contests for a win percentage of 62.3. Sean, how you feeling about the season, you bitch?
You know what, buddy? It feels good because, I'm going to be on the humble side here and just say it's because, I think I've gotten some luck thrown my way, but I also think it's learning from someone like you. You push me to be better. You are the king of kings when it comes to the MMA community. And I think, knowing what you know, I feel like I have to go a step further each and every week. And, we both live difficult lives, and now a lot is going on for both of us currently. So I think, I think that definitely weighs on both of us. And, I think comparing to, years prior in Dynasty, I think you did better earlier on. I think now with all the shit we have going on, it's a little bit harder to go and study the film like we once used to. But it is nice to know that I have a nice lead this year. And, it's just, I'll say that you push me to be the best that I can be. So, it's also nice to know that all the shit talking you did, because I don't do that at all, has come back and backfired. Because, it's nice to know that I have built this lead. And after all this time, that was my goal, was to catch up in Dynasty. I talked shit enough, and I said I was going to come back. You laughed at me. And here I am, in the all-time Dynasty. I am here, but still, it's not like we're anywhere near done. It's we still got more than half of 2025 to go, and still so much to do. A lead could get taken away any second. This card, I can go 0 for 4, and you could go fucking 6 or 7 and 0. I don't even know how many fighters you have going, but just like that, the tides could turn in 1 week, and my lead gets cut in half. So it's. You can never get too comfortable. It doesn't matter what lead you have. You just got to keep going. Especially for us, I'm a Knicks fan. You're a Thunder fan. It doesn't matter what the lead is in the playoffs. You got to keep your foot on the Tigers' neck and just keep going forward.
Man, there's so many things I love about this, right? Because as you stab me in the neck, you're feathering me on the other shoulder, right? So you're making me feel really good while also saying, hey, maybe you should be doing more homework. You fell off. You threw a lot in there, but hey, respect.
It's
I
the
really
subtle
appreciate
jabs.
the love. You have the subtle jabs. And I love that you said, no matter what, we got a long way to go. We're not getting finished, but sometimes we get tired along the way, right? Sometimes things get a little more difficult. And at least in my life, right? For those moments, I turn to shroom bars to get my protein in and also to keep me aware and fully engaged after a hard workout, after a long day, whatever I may need the energy pickup for. I eat a shroom bar. You can find your own at eatshroombar.com minus the go part. I just got hype. I'm telling you to go. So once again, that's eatshroombar.com. Use code OTS on your order to get 30% off so you could keep that energy that you need to keep going. Because God damn it, I know we need it, right? We done hobbled through this first half of 2025, but we're gonna come through and make sure that ACS doesn't come and take this baby away from us, right? But
That's right.
Let's get right into UFC Hellscape 27,026. It's been an eternity in here, right? We're living in purgatory. 1,000 lashes. Our first fight of the night is the Division of Queens, women's strawweight. The number 13 ranked Tecia Pennington, minus 333, going up against the number 14 ranked Luana Pinheiro. Now, right off the top, the dynasty implications are early and often. Tecia Pennington is my dynasty fighter, and I think that's only an appropriate place for me to start. I love this fight because I totally disagree with the odds. I think this is not any way this one-sided of a fight. Now, I'm picking Tecia Pennington here, but I like this matchup. I think this is a good fight for both of them in their careers. I really think that although Luana Pinheiro has come up on the wrong end of a lot of the fights in her UFC career, I think especially as of late, a lot of learning lessons, right, in these fights and sneaky in a lot of the losses she had, specifically in that Amanda Ribas fight. When I think about this matchup, I think Tecia Pennington, the path to victory for her, right, is to keep mixing things up, mentally wear on Luana Pinheiro, and force her to gas out. We've seen Luana Pinheiro's gas tank be suspect and her get finished late in fights. I think that's the clearest path here. Now, the biggest X factor in this fight that clearly the odds are neglecting is this is women's MMA, and Luana Pinheiro is a much more physically imposing athlete than Tecia Pennington is in a very different way, right? I think when it comes to the grappling, once they end up on the mat, they're about the same size. And I think Tecia should be able to dominate her there. But on the feet, I think Luana Pinheiro is sneaky, crafty, and powerful on the feet. I'm a little nervous about those exchanges and how willing Tecia may be to stay on the feet. Obviously, last fight against Carla Esparza, she wanted to keep it there. In this fight, I would imagine she wants to mix it up a little bit more, right? I think, especially early on, don't even risk it, right? Play from the outside. You're the smaller fighter. Throw kicks. Don't be afraid to potentially get a kick caught. Because guess what? Now you're in a situation where we can start grappling. I think early on, just force her to work the old DC game plan, and that should be the best way to victory for Tecia. Sneaky closer fight, but I'm going Tecia Pennington.
Yeah, you actually almost had every single point I had on this fight. Granted, it is the first fight of the night, so we're gonna agree on a lot. But it's definitely one of those classic striker versus grappler sort of combinations we got here, and I don't really understand why she's this crazy of a favorite. I know Tecia Pennington is a very good stand-up striker. She's got really high volume, relentless pace, constantly moving forward. But I feel for me, it's where Pinheiro could kind of find this. If she could find this way to the ground, I feel that Ticia's going to really struggle finding her way back up to the canvas or trying to find a dominant position to escape. So yeah, I think Pennington can do enough to control the cage, which is why I have her winning. But I have this as a unanimous decision, and I honestly didn't really have a clear cut winner until probably yesterday or the day before, because I felt that it could go any of these matchups can go either way. If someone can hold you down for 15 minutes and get the points, you'll win 2 of the 3 rounds. You're good. That can happen in this fight very easily. But I feel Tecia does a really good job of constantly pushing pressure, and I don't know if I should say her volume of striking is precise and accurate, but it definitely does enough to constantly keep her opponent on the back foot. And I feel like that is a recipe for victory. It's hard for a wrestler or a grappler who's going on the back foot constantly to now push, and for someone like Tecia to not expect it. I feel like she does a really good job at pushing her pace to the point where she expects to shoot or some sort of grappling exchange and is ready for it. So for me, I think this is one where the odds are a little crazy, but I would have been fine with like a minus 180, minus 200 sort of respect there, because I think Tecia can control the pace and win this one unanimously.
Yep, I love that we're on the same side about this one because it's a dynasty fight for me. Hopefully, we move on to the second fight of the night. This one, Sean's going to care a little bit more about, so it's appropriate. He's the one leading the breakdown. We got Hyunsung Park representing Team Sean, minus 175, going up against Carlos Hernandez, plus 160. Who you got?
This is a fun one. This is a fun one, honestly, because it's kind of similar to the first fight we just mentioned, where you got a striker versus a grappler sort of exchange here. And I think, for me, I'm picking Park to win. I think Park can get this fight done via TKO in the second round. That's what I have in my notes. I think this is one where his stand-up game is much more dominant than Carlos Hernandez's is. And I know Carlos is going to rely heavily on the wrestling and try to find his way to the ground. And that's smart, because I feel like Park, as much as I like Park. I feel like Park doesn't have or has never really been tested in the wrestling game at all at this UFC level. So I think something like that can really nerf an effective striker if he can't stop the takedown. So that's another one where it comes up to who's going to control the fight, who's going to fight their fight, and who's going to be the follower. And I feel for me, I think it's another one of those situations where I have to believe that the reason I'm picking Park is because Park is another one that's super aggressive in his pursuit, constantly going for finishes, constantly pushing forward. And I think when he's in control, the fight is his. And, I think that's a situation where Carlos is a great grappler. Like I said, I just don't think he has enough pressure himself to take someone like Park down and keep him there for 15 minutes or for 10 of the 15 minutes to avoid getting knocked out. And I think something like that could test Park early, but I think Park will do enough in the second round to really start piecing up someone like Hernandez, and I see this getting finished. And one of those finishes, not where it's like a clear knockout, but one of those where it's just such a heavy barrage of strikes that the ref just has to jump in. You see Carlos kind of freeze out there, and that's how I expect it to go.
Really good shout. I think the weird part about it though is I feel like we see it similarly, but we disagree on the the approach for Carlos. I feel like Hyunsung Park is a much more imposing athlete in this fight. And I think this fight is very much so an amalgamation of a lot of the fights on this card. I think a lot of this fights, the dynamic is going to be, hey, this guy really isn't that much. You could maybe even argue the guy he's fighting is probably more skilled than him, right? But when it comes to the physical athlete that's going out there and what they can do with that athletic platform, it's hard to necessarily overcome some of those disadvantages. I think specifically, like you said, in this matchup, I think Carlos Hernandez has really good scrambling instincts. And I think where Hyunsung Park could end up in trouble isn't even necessarily like, hey, I'm getting taken down. Like, I don't really necessarily see that as something that Hernandez could do repeatedly for 2 out of 3 rounds. I think it's really getting caught in a situation where he gets reversed at the end of a round, right? Where maybe he was having success, but Hernandez is pushing him back and then eventually finds himself in a spot where now he's on top and could start landing some devastating ground and pound, right? We've seen that in previous fights of his against guys like Dennis Bondar, where he's able to just get him out of there in a split second. So I like Carlos Hernandez's veteran savvy and instincts because of that. Like, I think he is someone that will take a moment and force the initiative over and over again, right? There's a lot of times where people will get to that spot and then not execute on those finishing blows. I think Carlos Hernandez, if you give him a second, he's going to go out there and do that. You can say the same thing about Park on the feet. I think this guy is a tank, man. There's something, and I hope this isn't a racist thing to say, right? I'm starting, it's going to be a good show when I'm starting saying some shit like that. But I think there is something to the Asian archetype of a fighter that's just a marauder, right? And willing to go out there and do what they got to do to get to you. And I think this guy is the embodiment of that. I also feel like this is a good time to showcase your depth of skill, right? Like, I think he should be in a place, athletically especially, to control this fight everywhere it goes and prevent it from getting to a spot where he starts losing control of it. So I like Park here in this spot, but Carlos Hernandez is a grizzly vet. This guy has wins over Charles Johnson and Jose Johnson in his amateur career. That doesn't even speak of his professional career. So this guy is battle tested, and this is going to be Hyunsung Park's hardest fight without a doubt, like without a doubt. So this fight's exciting because of that. I think the odds are where they deserve to be, but this is going to be a fun one, no matter who's the winner at that. We move on to our third fight of the night. And of course, we're back on the women's MMA side of the world. We've got Elise Reed plus 460 going up against Denise Gomes minus 590. And I think it's quite a theme in MMA, right? That we see these bloated odds. I think this one is particularly deserving. Now, respect to Denise Gomes, respect to Elise Reed. I really like Elise Reed. Like, I think Elise Reed gives most women in this division problems, right? I just think of course, she is going to be out. I think Denise Gomes is going to be outmatched at range, especially with this Southpaw versus Southpaw matchup. I think it's going to be a hard task, right, for Denise Gomes to keep this fight controlled, to not end up in a spot where she's getting pieced up for periods. I think there's going to be dangerous moments in this fight, but I do think once Denise Gomes is able to either get in there, mix things up, and potentially end up on top, I think the path to victory from that moment is so easy for Denise Gomes. Now, is the past success of her takedown game super encouraging here? Not necessarily. I'm not saying this because she's some kind of Hamza Chimaev. I just think the deficiencies in Elise Reed's game are so exploitable. And I think this is the prospect fight for Denise Gomes in the way of, hey, you had a hard go in the last one. Yeah, people argue you could have won, but at the end of the day, you should be able to identify the ways in which you win this fight and go out there and make it happen. Go out there and do it. And obviously everyone's going to be higher on you again. This gives Elise Reed a great shot. And I think the momentum of her career up to this point, this is a perfect matchup. Like, I think this is a very winnable fight for her despite the odds. But I still like the odds where they're at because I just like the athlete that Denise Gomes is in there. Sean, do you agree with me?
It sucks. I hate when this happens because I literally have bullet points that go into every fight. I've said this before. And I just watch you say my bullet points. I'm like, I got 4 left, 3, 2. All right, and he's got them all. So in this one, yes, I think you've quite literally covered everything I was going to say. I think it's literally for me, it's Denise Gomez's raw power and just her aggression that could be an unbelievable like output in this fight, and you could really see it exposed against someone like Elise Reed. But I think someone like Gomes, who doesn't have that really great of technique, that could kind of make it a little bit of an easier sort of fight for for Reed. But I think Reed's best shot is another one where I feel like I'm like a broken record here, where you kind of have to keep this fight very close. You could turn it into a grappling match, but I would say in sort of like dirty boxing or just keeping this fight very close to one another, I think that's something where if you could keep Gomez's range away from her and use it as her kryptonite, I think that's something where you could kind of expose someone like Gomes right now because she's still very raw in her technique and her talent. You know it's there. It's just not refined yet. It just needs precision. And I feel like that's probably where Reed and her team have to exploit this. But I think in this situation, I have it where Gomes is going to knock her out in the second round. I think this is a very interesting fight because for someone like me that gets really excited for certain women's MMA fights, I know how this is going to sound. But it's just one of those where I struggle with the excitement of women's MMA at times for certain fights, especially prelim hellscape dog shit cards. It's hard to excite myself on a Saturday morning as I head to work and go, hell yeah, I got this card tonight. Dude, there's a fucking Denise Gomes fight tonight. Like it's hard. It's hard for me. But this is actually one where I'm really excited to see how much Denise Gomes has improved and how precise she can be moving forward. Because that for me is something, you know, is she going to be a real contender in this division or not? And this is usually that time where I start to either believe or I'm out. And it's hard for me to come back in, pause, once I'm already out, pause again. So it's like, I'm. So this fight, I have Gomes via knockout, but this is probably one of my most important fights of the entire card.
Wow. I love that little underscore there because, yes, even though in theory it should be easy, right? I think there's a lot of implications here. But hey, Angela Hill is no pushover out there. And I think that fight was debatable. So we got a lot of a lot to look forward to here. But we move on to another thing that just makes Sean so fucking pumped. And I love that he gets to go first for this one. We got Luana Santos minus 163 going up against Tainara Lisboa plus 142. We got some prospects here in Sean's favorite division. So why don't you tell us more, Sean?
Honestly, I don't know if I've ever had a fight where I've been so concerned about an injury. And I've been so focused on the outcome of a fight being because of an injury. And in this situation, I feel like someone like Lisboa coming off of that knee injury, I'm so curious to see how her movement is now. Like, I know this is a dog shit card, but this is another one where it's kind of like, is this going to be a good fight or is this fight going to absolutely suck? Because the odds are there to be a great fight. But I'm more concerned for me is the uncertainty of how she's going to be able to perform coming off of such I should say a nasty injury, but a significant one. It's hard to come back and then still be high profile like this. I felt like this fight could have been if she was at 100%. So for me, I actually have this as Santos winning via submission in the second round because I just feel that the time isn't right for this fight. I wish this fight didn't happen yet. I'm glad it is happening. I'm glad to see Lisboa back to fighting. I just feel to me like it's the exchanges in clinch and Muay Thai and constantly, if it just does ever go to the grappling, like I feel like that's going to be such a tough time for someone like Lisboa, and I think you're going to really see some compromising positions, if that makes any sense. And I don't like this fight for her right now. In 6 months from now, I probably would have been all in for it, but this is one of those where I think this is one of the very few times I've ever looked at an injury being such a concern for me, and seeing a fighter not at 100%, but I don't even think she's really even at 70%. I feel like this is her forcing her way back in and forcing what a potential high profile talent into something rushed. It almost not it doesn't make any sense, but it feels like Darren Till-esque to me. It's how I look at it for some reason, where it's like I don't need to see you fighting right now. I don't need to see you going for better competition now. I'd rather see you at your best and slowly climb than this. And I could be completely dead wrong. Lisboa can go out there and fucking sub her in the fucking first round, and I'll sit here looking, stupid. But for me, I just feel like this fight is going to be so limited, and it's going to be, honestly, I feel like disappointing for this entire fight in general.
I love that you came with the depressing side of this fight because, goddamn it, I'm picking the optimistic side of this fight, and I think it's important to mention that there is a very, I don't know how else to say this, right? Just me being honest here. A fun dynamic about this fight because it's a head-to-head, right? So I think there's a dynasty implication here. You are the Luana Santos owner. I am the Tainara Lisboa owner. So it's only right that we have differing opinions on the same goddamn things for probably reasons we shouldn't. But the thing that I'm excited about this fight is the exact opposite of what you're worried about. I think skill for skill, I favor Lisboa in every category here, and that's why I think
for sure. I
and
agree
that's
with
why.
that.
Yep, and I get the point you're making 1,000% too, right? And I agree with you. I think no matter what, you got to consider these factors. I think it's encouraging that despite that gruesome injury, she was able to still go on and win that fight. And I think just I need to trust the athlete, right? Especially this being someone that I've seen the potential in, that I went out there and drafted. Like, I need to trust that if you are confident to go out there and fight, regardless of financial situation, which is probably the key motivator, right? When it comes to short comebacks, regardless of financial situation, you have to at least give yourself a chance out there, right? This isn't TJ Dillashaw against Aljamain Sterling for the title. You got to consider your career. And I think if she's ready to go, I think all things considered, she should be the favorite here. Now, I agree with you. I think a knee injury is a big factor, But what troubles me so much is although Luana Santos has had good moments in her UFC career, right, that makes it appear that she is on her way to something special in this division in 125, the saddest part about it is when you look back at those wins, they age like milk. So it's hard, especially when you looking back at that Casey O'Neill fight. I thought Casey O'Neill fought a great fight in that fight and clearly won. But the issue is, do I rate Casey O'Neill necessarily? Like, and being honest, I like Extreme Couture. I like everything they're doing over there. I'm not sure. I'm not sold on Casey O'Neill yet. So I got a lot of feelings about this fight. I think it'll be a tragedy for my dynasty if Tainara doesn't win this. So this is a big one for both of us here. I think.
I had to agree with you. Like that part is yes. If they were at 100%, I'm picking Lisboa all day. I don't know. You know, it's only been, well, I should say only, but we're 15 to 18 months post injury. It's hard. It's hard to determine how good someone can be coming back for the first time from a pretty nasty knee injury. Mm-hmm. And, you know, you have no idea if they're really going to be 100%. And from what has been said and what has been talked about, it doesn't sound like she is. So it's like I said, if they're 100%, I'm with you. But it's one of those things now where now I need to be convinced that you are 100%. So I have to pick the opposite for right now.
I love it, man. This has been a very revelating fight to go over, right? Because we're both sticking to our ladies, despite what our deeper gut tells us most of the time. So I love this. We move on to our next fight, a fight that takes place in a very fun division, right? I love this division. I'm so excited for what we have to look forward to here at featherweight, and it's only right that we get another promising UFC prospect making their UFC debut. You got Yadier Del Valle. I sounded so white saying that. I'm sorry, ladies and gentlemen. Going up against Connor Matheus, minus 480 for Del Valle, plus 390 for Connor Matheus. Now, I love that I get the honor to speak about this fight because Sean and I are going to be transparent here, right? We didn't see this fight coming, right? I saw this fight 4 hours ago. So I had a little more time than Sean, right? So I had to come in, I had to put my big boy boots on and make sure I was ready to talk about this fight. Thankfully, very familiar with Connor Matheus' game. Let's start there, right? Let's start there. I think Connor Matheus is the kind of fighter that in his regional scene, he probably was cooking everybody. Like he probably was doing the damn thing, right? But I think as he's developed in his career, the biggest thing that is apparent about him is that he is very fragile and he does not have the chin that it takes to survive in MMA. And I know that sounds very hyperbolic. I said that about guys that won in previous fights, right? But I think what makes this tough for me specifically is we saw in Connor Matheus, if I'm not mistaken, last two fights that he gets just immediately taken out of there. Yep, we got Dennis Bazookia, which a lot of promise, but then Jose Delgado making his UFC debut. Now, this would all be well and good until I started putting some things together, right? I'm like, a guy making his UFC debut in Yadier Del Valle, 100%, he should be the favorite, but minus 480 is kind of steep, right? So let me look into this. And then I ended up seeing his fight with, and I think it's important that I stress this because there's a lineage, there's some MMA math that goes into my explanation. So I need you to lock in on me. But I watched his fight in Fury FC against Michael Aswell. Now, if you're a fan of the Dana White Contender Series, probably remember Michael Aswell's fight with Bogdan Grad. Bogdan Grad just made his UFC debut and got a very impressive win. So that fight in a vacuum, to make this point as briefly as possible, I thought Michael Aswell gave him a run for his money and probably should have won that fight. Yadier Del Valle absolutely put it on Michael Aswell and made that fight look easy. Now, very different styles, obviously, and I think Yadier Del Valle is a little bit of a smaller 145er. But I think even with that, I think his pace and pressure is going to be too much for Connor Matheus. I think Del Valle sneaky has a path to victory to take him down and TKO him with ground and pound in the first. So that's my pick here.
Yeah, I from the 20 minutes of time that I've had to put this together, because I like you said, I had no idea this fight was even happening. I felt like this was brand new. So you told me right before we started recording. So obviously, I've seen Connor Matheus. It's been ugly both times. I think this is probably the lock of the night. This is I feel like they threw this one together, like in case this card is shit and it ain't working. People are tuning out. They could throw this in. You get like a nasty knockout or a crazy right hand or something, and all the fans are like, wow. All of a sudden the card starts hyping up again. And I think that's kind of why they decided the last second to throw this one in there. So I think there's two different levels of fighters here. I think this would be the shocking upset of the night if Connor Matheus can pull something off. But it's exactly like you said. Like this, he reminds me of a dude who in the regional scene was the man. And then I just bit off a little bit more than he could chew. Now, he tried in Dana White Contender Series first time. Lost to Francis Marshall, got that second opportunity, won, by unanimous decision, and then since then it's been, it's been a tougher ground to really set foot on. So I feel like this one is the lock of the night, and I think this one ends the first round.
Just like that, we move on to probably one of the more fun fights of the night, if you ask me. We got one of my most exciting fighters that I love to see fight. One of my guys, right? Shout out. One of my damn guys. And Jared Gordon, minus 117, going up against Thiago Moises, plus 115 at the lightweight division. Got to make sure y'all could hear me straight, right? I love this lightweight fight. I don't get the pleasure, though, of leading the dance because this man is the Thiago Moises owner. So, Sean, who do you got at lightweight?
Dude, I love Thiago. I don't know why. I feel like I say this every time he fights. I love this fucking guy. I am such a huge fan of him, and I'm a fan of Jared Gordon too. I still think he beat Patty that night. I don't care what anyone says. So it's like I think this is such a fun fight. But this is about boxing versus leg kicks. I honestly think this is if Jared Gordon can withstand getting leg kicked to death, I think he has a great shot. But for me, I think it's so easy to write off someone like Thiago, and I have this one as my number 2, as unpredictable because this could go either way, and I have it blank on who I'm going to choose. But I'm picking Moises here because I have him, but 2, I just firmly believe he's one of those fighters to me that it's right there. The talent is there. I feel like he could be something here, and it's just I don't know what it is. I don't know what sets him back so drastically to not only the rankings, but also just like the fan base and his potential. I feel like no matter what, it's like what he can be is here. And it's just every performance he ends up here. I don't know what it is, but I pick him for a reason. I think I picked him on Dynasty recently because I think it was I finally started to believe
since the beginning of time, brothers.
Have I? I thought I dropped him and I brought him back.
No, he was one of your first picks, man.
Yeah, because the BSD thing. I was such a believer. I was such a believer in from that fight, and that was a good fight until it wasn't. But it was, I like Jared Gordon, but Jared Gordon's another one where I feel like we saw his ceiling already, and I think Moises can remain super dangerous on the ground. I think he could dominate with the leg kicks and really force Gordon to be not fragile, but really stagnant and really feinting and biting to the fact of whenever Moises is going to throw a leg kick. And I think that's something where it's kind of like mind games in this fight. And I think Moises can do enough to slip away with the unanimous decision victory. But I would not be surprised if Gordon wins. I just think for me, I think it's probably favoritism and the fact that I'm such a big fan of Thiago that I have to pick him here.
This is a tough one for me because off the top, I agree with you. I'm picking Thiago Moises here as the underdog. Now, I think that what sets them apart and what sets the expectation is really the strength of schedule. Like, I think that's the real issue. I think we've seen Thiago, like all the guys he's lost to, right? If you just read those names, it's all killer, no filler at 155. And I think both of these guys kind of are victims of that, right? Like they can't quite get that momentum just because who the hell's waiting at the next UFC card for you, right? So, I mean, BSD, Joel Alvarez, Ludovic Klein, is fucking Islam Makachev. Like these are all guys that you don't want to see in your bracket, respectfully. And I think also notable, right? Although Jared Gordon has fought Charles Oliveira and other very high level opponents too, I think there's even more distinctive line, right? I think Thiago Moises has fought clearer the more competition out of the two. I think Jared Gordon has also proven, though, to be more of, and I don't know how to say this without sounding disrespectful, but to be more of the fighter of the two, right? More of the guy that can shorten the distance between their athletic gifts with his heart, right? And with what he's willing to do out there to get this fight. I think that's what makes this fight super exciting because although Thiago Moises on paper, like we said, right, going back to this dynamic, I think although Jared Gordon is not physically imposing in this matchup, I think his skills are, right? I think especially with the way he's going to wear on you throughout the fight. But I think Thiago Moises is the more skilled fighter pound for pound, right? So that's why I'm picking him here despite going inverse on the logic in the other one. I think ultimately Thiago Moises is the bigger fighter. And although he has shown susceptibility later in fights to start maybe gassing a little bit, I think he should be able to control Jared Gordon and honestly maybe even hurt him on the feet. He might not even have to deal with this because he may be able to time him on an exit and catch him with a straight shot. So I like both of these guys. Once again, I'm not hating on Jared Gordon. I could totally see a world where he drowns Thiago Moises and gets a win. I just think I'm very high on Thiago Moises' skills, and I think he's going to end up in that top 5 position at some point in his UFC career. We move on out of the lightweight division and up to the welterweight division. We got Gabe Green plus 190 going up against Matheus Camilo minus 225, making his UFC debut. Sean, I'm so excited for this man to make his UFC debut. And I love this matchup because despite Gabe Green not having the best luck in his last couple fights, I think this is a great fight. Like, I think this is a great test for both of these guys to really see where they're at this stage of their career. I think earlier in Gabe Green's career, I was honestly very high. I don't know if you remember that. I was honestly very high on his potential. Obviously, he's shown the biggest problem, I think, in his game is his patience and recognition, right? I think he can let a fight start slipping away from him and he'll feel it and then be like, I gotta go. And that could just end a fight, right? So you got to be careful. I mean, we saw that happen, obviously, with Brian Battle, and that was early on. But I think we see some of that even with the Ian Gary fight. Like, I feel like Ian Gary, looking good, right? Looking good against one Gabe Green. But when it comes to Camilo, I'm torn. Like, I think most of the time, guys like this, I'm super excited from, right? High pedigree, from a really good camp, right? Like, you get excited about young prospects from Extreme Couture at 24 years of age. I'm just a little worried that, similar to Myron Santos, this might be his Francis Marshall moment, right? Even though he won that fight, that was one hell of a gut check moment. And multiple times in that fight, it looked like he probably shouldn't have been the guy to win. This can end up being that kind of fight for Matheus. I think although he's shown to be physically imposing on all phases, like he can grapple, he can strike, he can do whatever you ask him to do. And he's very raw in his potential in that way. I'm just worried that Gabe Green might be able to sustain what comes early from Camilo and then maybe put it on him late. But I think I'm gonna ride with this young talent, man. Shout out to Extreme Couture and everything they have going. What makes me excited, particularly about this, is you don't see debuting fighters usually get this kind of path, right? It's not, hey, you showed up and now all of a sudden people know who you are. Like most of the time, you have to prove yourself to the UFC. Like you have to put yourself in a position that they feel, okay, it's beyond just we're gonna go out there and sign this guy because he's good. Like he already has sweat equity for us. He already bled on Dana White's canvas for us, right? We could put him out there because he went through the Contender Series. Like this is a guy that they're picking up straight, that they know, hey, this guy can be something for us. I think that says a lot. I'm going Matheus Camilo.
Yeah, for me, I talk about this all the time too on the show, is the fact of how constant, how often are you getting it back into the cage? And for someone like me, I feel like I have to believe in the run that Camilo has brought coming into the UFC. He's had like you said, definitely a gut check moment, but I feel like he has shown that in recently that he could really be something in the UFC. And I feel like everyone has a gut check moment. I think um, when you were talking, for some reason I thought of Patty Pinpoint in because I probably was thinking of Jared Gordon. But in that fight, I think everyone felt that Patty had his gut check moment. But if you look at who Patty is now, you're like, wow, he's really here. So I feel like anyone can have a gut check moment, and it depends on who you are and how you learn from it. Are you gonna let that take you and be like, man, maybe I'm really not that great. Maybe I'm not ready yet. Or you're gonna be like, man, he got me a couple times. It was close, but that's not really who I am. I'm way better than this guy. I'm gonna prove it in my next fight. And so I think this is one of those situations. And someone like Gabe Green, yes, you were high on him, but we're talking about 2 years since he last fought. I don't even know if there's anyone that's listening to this right now. Can you remember the fight he had against Ian Gary? Because that was his second to last fight.
I can.
It's
And
one of
guess
those.
and Ian Gary's had a whole
Obviously, I
career
know you
since then.
can.
He had a whole career since then. That's the point. I
Exactly.
agree. It's been a long
And that's what I'm
fucking
talking
time.
about. It's been way too long. If we're talking about pulling up Gabe Green's file and going, oh, let me check the tape. Oh yeah, that Ian Gary fight. Oh yeah. Before he was even called Ian Machado Gary, it was. Let me check that fight. Oh my God, that was the second to last fight. Wait a second. How long? It's been 4 years since that. Oh, and his last fight was 2 years, and he's canceled 3 times. It's like that's it. For me, that always gets me. It could be personal, it could be injury, it could be anything. But if you're not consistent and you can't find consistency to get back in the cage, the talent, no matter what it is always going to shy away from what I see you as. Like I'm never gonna. You could be fucking the best talent in the world, but I think we can look at that at any rate. We can look at that at the pinnacle of the UFC and someone like Conor McGregor in a way. Not trying to compare because they're not the same. But a guy who had all the talent in the world, and the guy fights once every fucking 3-4 years, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, whatever. But every time you see him back, you go, yeah, but it's been 3 years. Yeah, but it's been 2 years. Yeah, but it's been 4 years. So it's just, if Gabe Green had fought this year, I probably would have picked Gabe Green. But since Gabe Green hasn't fought this year or last year, I have to pick someone like Camilo to come in who's on a hot run right now. Even in his last couple fights and whatever, I think he's got heavy hands enough. His recent momentum, I think he can come off of Gabe Green's really bad knockout loss 2 years ago and just keep pushing. I think this is one of those you can tally to the win column. I don't think Camilo's got a lot of film to study because it's a lot of not regional scene, but it's much smaller market. And I think this is going to be a huge step up for him, but it's a perfect step up for him because you're getting a guy who was supposed to be a top prospect and just the consistency of fighting in the cage has just not happened. And he has fallen. So it's like, it's such a weird way from 4 years ago. You're looking at Gabe Green up here. You don't even know who Camilo is here. And somehow in 4 years, now they're here. So I I'm picking Camilo to win. I honestly have this one as a second round knockout. I just think someone like Gabe Green, who hasn't been in the cage, is going to get tested. I don't know if the confidence is really going to be there in Gabe Green, just like you said, where he's going to start to panic, where he's going to start to force, like, I got to do something here. And I feel like that's going to force him into trouble. And I think someone like Camilo, who's been fighting so consistently and constant in 2025, 2024, I think that's just going to lead him right to a nice little right hook or some whatever. Nice little finish that it's going to be a very nice, clean highlight reel for him that we'll see for years to come. So I think this one is pretty telling for me. So give me Camilo.
That's a very good point. I mean, think about this. Camilo could have a 2-year layoff like Gabe Green did, come back and be 26 years old. You would feel much better about a 24-year-old taking a 2-year break than a 30-year-old taking a 2-year break because they're coming back now. They're 32. I mean, in theory, right? There is something to also making sure that you're good, right? Physically and mentally, right? To go out there and prepare and compete. Because who knows? Maybe he needed that time to go out here and fight Camilo and be in a position where he can survive, right? To see the third round. So there's two sides of this coin, but I agree with you on that sentiment in general. I think even despite that, though, one thing I disagree with you on is even if Gabe Green was active, I still would pick Camilo here. But that doesn't mean that I look at Camilo as this like phenom. I think the fact that he's 24 years old and there's a real platform to build off of is amazing and great. But even a win here that maybe isn't spectacular doesn't necessarily give us that excitement, right? I think there needs to be exclamation point stamp on this win, considering Gabe Green's career, which I think makes this a harder position for Camilo now, right? Because I think this is still your debut, and you're still fighting a guy that, despite not having the most success in the UFC, has experience and is a vet. So this is a real fun fight, despite us being pretty clear on who we got. We move on to a very. I'm gonna say right here, Sean. How about this? This is my co-main event. I don't care about anything else. This right here is my co-main event. You could argue, hey, maybe Jerry Gordon's in that too. Maybe Jerry Gordon versus Thiago Moises is in that running, but this is for me what I'm most pumped for. Another dope fight in the featherweight division. Now, if I'm not mistaken, I had the honor going first last time, right? So my guy Sean gets the honor of leading the dance with these featherweights. Now, the most excited thing I was for getting back to this fight is now we got dynasty implications once again, right? This is your dynasty fighter, Sean, and you got Julian Erosa. So let's see if you're picking him here.
I am not. I'm not here. I'm picking Costa here, honestly. Tough one because Erosa is so scrappy. You know, he's got superior striking. I think he's even got better grappling. I think he could do it all. I think he's really, really dangerous. I think for me, Costa's striking is a little bit better. And for me, I look at it as Costa could probably outclass him in the stand-up. And I feel like this fight, not to take away from what Erosa could do, I just feel like this fight's going to find a way to stay standing for the majority. And I feel like Erosa's best chance of victory is to find this to the ground. Get to the ground. Force the submission. Force the grappling exchange. And that's your path to victory. And honestly, it's one of those where you say it to yourself so much that you're like, oh, maybe I'll go, oh, wait, maybe Julian's the guy. I just feel in this situation, I don't know what it is. Maybe this is just a gut feeling. I feel like this fight's going to stay standing for the majority. And in that scenario, I think that Costa just has more sharpness, more control, more pace than Erosa at this point in time. And I think he'll just do just enough. I think it'll be a very close fight. And I think he'll do just enough to beat Erosa by unanimous decision. But if Erosa were to take this to the ground early in this fight and can win that first round, then I think it's Erosa all day. But I think this first round's telling. Is Erosa going to go to his strengths and force the grappling and the submission skills and, go back to the guillotine that he's so good at? Or is he going to really try to exchange with Costa? And I think if that is the case, I really feel Costa could do more damage and could really control the octagon in his way. But maybe it's just a gut feeling for me, but that's just how I feel at this current moment.
This is a fun fight because I feel like this is two versions of the same dude that just grew up separate. Like I feel like this is like alternate universe. Melky Costa maybe saw this potential a little earlier in his career than Julian Erosa did. I just gotta say, man, the way we look at Julian Erosa, right? Julian Erosa is on your dynasty team, Sean. The fact that he got to a point in his career, and this is not me trying to rub our own shoulders or hype ourselves up, but this is me giving praise to Erosa. Based on his career, right, and who we thought we learned he is, not once, not twice, 3 times. This man came into the UFC 3 times and now is on this run. So no matter what, will have immense respect and admiration for Julian Erosa and his career. And I think that's what makes this fight super fun, is because we got this new exciting prospect coming up against Julian Erosa once again. And we've seen this story many a times, right? I think we pick C-Rod in this matchup because we're like, man, we love Julian. He's good, but I think he should be outclassed here. And I think I agree with you. I'm picking Melky Costa here because I think he's more violent. And I think his losses are quality too, right? Like Steve Garcia in that fight got out aggressive. I don't think that's going to be the case here against Erosa. I think Erosa's path to victory is really keeping this thing on the outside, being a ember in the wind, right? Keeping himself away from everything that Melky's trying to do and countering him on the way in. I think he could really style on Melky if he could stay disciplined in that way. But I think Melky's just so good at mixing things up and finding advantageous positions, even if he has to like this is why I love both of these guys too as well, because they have such unique fighting styles. Like Melky Costa is so good at finding leverage in positions that people usually don't, right? Against the fence, he can push himself through, especially with head posting, and then find himself in a position where he can now get the takedown when typically people are getting stuffed from these spots. Like he has a good leverage, especially when it comes to clinch exchanges. And that comes from his size for this division. That's what's fun about this fight too. These guys is like a mirror match. They both have that size for this division. So I think any grappling exchanges in this fight, watch out. They're going to be fucking fun to watch, super high paced and technical. But I think I agree with you. Ultimately, it really comes down to the MMA aspect of it. When you put it all together, I just think Melky's a little more violent, and I think Melky can have a little bit more success because of that. But I think this is, no matter how you slice it, this is going to be one competitive fight. And I think both of these guys are going to show who they are in this fight.
I have to just say really quickly, it's like deja vu, because it was like I was kind of like joking around about Erosa and Elkins 2 months ago. Like, it just goes to show how motivated Erosa is, and I was proven wrong, man. I looked at that as like, that this was probably heading towards the end for one of these two, if not both. And I wasn't too hyped about that fight when it was happening. And now I look at it as Erosa really has like a shot here to really build. First off, I think the biggest winning streak in his UFC career, and really keep pushing forward. And I can't even believe it. I feel like I was just talking about him versus Elkins not too long ago. And I love that. I love seeing fighters fight multiple times a year, but the fact that you're fighting 2 months later, I can't believe it's been 2 months since Volkanovski Lopez, but it's one of those crazy situations where we're back here, or 1 month, right? April, 1 month. I think it's been 1 month. And even crazy. Okay, I'm about to say 2 months. Crazy. 1 month since he last fought. So obviously it's even crazier to be on a pay-per-view card, win via knockout, and then be like, throw me another one. I'm ready next month. I'm good to go. And I love that. I love fighters who look and continue to push and keep fighting and get better and better. And I just mentioned in the last fight, when you don't have consistency, it I don't care how good you are, it throws me off. It makes me think like, why am I going to believe in you if you can't believe in yourself to get back here? And there's a million things for a reason why maybe you're not there, but I can't dig deep and fucking believe in you as picking you in Dynasty or whatever if I can't see you. So it's for me. I love Erosa, but it's I just feel in this one, Costa might end the win streak, but the hype is there right now for him. So he might bring his 4-fight win streak, and I think it is the biggest of his career if he's able to do it in the UFC.
Definitely would be the biggest, and also would be just redefining once again that ceiling, because he's just been doing that over and over again. So shout out to both of these guys. I think that same goes for Melky Costa, even though he's much younger. I think he hasn't disappointed us to that level, right? That we can look at him in that way, especially because when you look at the losses, like I said, they age well, but he's still somebody that's getting better in a way that you maybe didn't expect a couple fights ago. So this is dope. We move on to the middleweight division. This one I wasn't ready for, right? Because when I was looking at it and I was prepping, I was like, on paper, I'm like, hey, this fight sucks. It's one sided, and I was like, hey, this fight is actually pretty good. And I think this fight all comes down to the intangibles. And of course, the big X factor here is this is a dynasty implicated fight, as I am the owner of Nursulton Ruziboev. So I think some bias is implicit and allowed there. When it comes to this fight, I'm fucking scared, man. I think this is the Dustin Stoltzfus tour. I don't think he's winning this fight. I'm picking Nursulton. But man, once again, speaking of that same story arc, what this guy has accomplished in his last couple of fights is really, really, really remarkable, right? I mean, let's just go down memory lane here. He had a win against a man that people are still very high on, who just hated on all of Sean's entire legacy in Mexico, Joe Pfeiffer. That everyone was like, "Yay, that was a fluke win. He took him down and broke his arm. He would have lost that fight had he not." But doesn't really look like a fluke anymore when he moves on to get wins back to back over Punahele Soriano and Mark Andre Barrio, who's out here crushing dudes' skulls on UFC pay-per-views. God damn it! So what makes this fight interesting, though, is I think Dustin Stoltzfus has actually really improved his striking at range. Not in a way that I think he's going to go out there and clip my guy, but in a way that I think it makes it more accessible for him to start working his way into grappling situations. Now, obviously, the biggest fight we could point to in Nursulton's UFC career, at least, was his fight with Joaquin Buckley, as far as instances that he's going to be taken down and what that looks like. Now, this is nowhere near the level of athlete that Joaquin Buckley is. And I think especially at 185, Nursulton will be significantly bigger than Dustin Stoltzfus. I'm really interested to see how these grappling exchanges go, right? Because I think if Dustin Stoltzfus in the first round is able to get a hold of him, right? He doesn't even have to take him down. But if he's not getting immediately shut down at the touch, I think this is a dangerous fight. Like, if he's not immediately getting shucked off round one and he can wear on Nursulton, this can become a very GM3 type performance out of Dustin Stoltzfus. But ultimately, I'm going to go with my guy to be a sniper at range and find his shot against somebody who's a little unorthodox, but stays pretty much in range for the punches against somebody that is significantly bigger than him at 185.
There you go. Takes a second for me to unmute for some reason. But for me, I'm with you. I honestly think this is one where maybe I'm just not as high on Dustin as you are, but I think I do give Dustin the credit for where he is currently. I think he's got pretty good power. I just don't think he's that as diverse in his attacks as someone like Nursulton is. I think there's a huge massive size reach advantage here. Jesus, I couldn't say that. And size and reach advantage is going to play a huge factor. I think That's a nightmare for Dustin. It's always been that way his whole career. I think the fact that Nursulton is way more diverse is another huge factor into this fight. So honestly, I think it's one where Nursulton is so explosive and so dynamic. I have this one as my like number one lock, to be completely honest. Like I think this one ends either late first round or early second round, and I think Nursulton, this is like a statement win for him. I like Dustin a lot. I just think this one is just I don't know a situation where Nursulton doesn't have the upper hand here. I think it's like maybe the deeper resume. You know, like I really I've been trying to look at this fight and try to look at like maybe Dustin can go here and pick apart here, but I think this is such a big moment for Nursulton here to take advantage of here. This could a win like this and a dominant one could really, really make this like a not a household name yet, but getting really close into prime contention to the rankings and into like what his potential really is.
Yeah, this should be a statement win for no matter who wins. We move on to another one of those fights because man, this is a sneaky banger, right? Because of all the implications. I love both of these guys. We got the returning super Sodiq Yusuff plus 115 going up against Myron Santos minus 135. God damn it, this is a featherweight fight card because we got all the featherweight fights. This is one hell of a matchup here too. And I love that my guy Sean gets to lead the dance because both of these guys are on my dynasty team. So how do you feel about Sodiq Yusuff trying to turn it around against Myron Santos, also trying to turn it around after even he himself admitted he probably should have lost that fight against Francis Marshall?
Yeah, this is interesting because I don't know. Like I think Sodiq Yusuff was really looked at as like a super high level up and coming prospect, right? And in that Barboza fight, where he had Barboza out of there, it was right there. But Barboza and that experience, that dude's a fucking dog. He does not die, and to rally back and to beat Yusuff, it almost like did something to Yusuff like mentally, because then he goes into that UFC 300 fight, and like I said, still like the fact that he's a big name that he's thrown on UFC 300, right? Like I think people forget about shit like that. Like if your name is in UFC 300, the UFC considers you like a top thing, unless your name is Cody Brundage, then you're just there to be a fucking tuna can. But you know, everyone else is there to hype up that fight, and I think Sadiq is still considered that dog. I just don't know if he believes in it at this moment, and I think he's really trying to get that back. But I look at someone like Myron Santos, and I just see that this fight's going to be on the feet. I'd be super super surprised if they either of these two try to wrestle or grapple. If anything, I think it might be Sadiq that tries it, but I think this one's going to be super high paced. The exchanges are going to be crazy. It's going to be a striking showcase for sure. I think adamantly, I think this one is me being more biased towards what I've seen from Sadiq the last, I would say, two fights. Even in his last win, I've been thrown off by Yusuff, and I feel like that fight against Barbosa really like caught my eye. And I thought even in UFC 300, I think I even picked Yusuff to win. Like I wasn't too high on Diego Lopez yet, and facing such a high like challenger and someone like Sadiq. So I was like, oh, he's gonna be fine. Like, you know, he got tested by a true veteran. He almost had Barboza out of there. I think he'll take care of Lopez here. And then Lopez beat the shit out of him in like 30 seconds. So I think it was just one of those situations where Yusuf got both sides of the coin, where he dominated the first round. He thought he had him out of there, but he didn't. And then, you know, it's not even like it's momentum, obviously, but I think it's like mental when you're like, man, I had him. I put all my energy to try and put this dude away in the first 5 minutes. This guy won't go away. Now I got to fucking battle back 10 minutes, and now he's piecing me up. Now, oh, this fucking hurts. Oh, this fucking hurts more. And I think that's what leads to a loss. Then you go into someone who's not a veteran, a guy who you think is, okay, I can put this guy away. He has a lot of hype, not really a veteran. It's the exact opposite. And you think, okay, same game plan. Let me try to, finish this dude early. Let me get a nice victory back, especially UFC 300, and then you get put away early. So it's like he got both situations that could have possibly gone wrong, and now he needs a big win here. So it's for me. I don't know if I see it yet because I think someone like Santos is nasty. I think it's the wrong time again for someone like Yusuff. I think if Yusuff had beaten Barboza and even had a nice fight or a close fight against someone like Lopez, I think I would have believed in him more. But I feel like Santos is so fucking technical, so much more precise, so much tighter in his striking, and I think that's going to be enough to eventually land a clean, like one of the cleanest shots I think of the night, and I have it as a second round knockout for Santos. So it sucks because I'm such a fan of Yusuff, but I am praying that Yusuff can find a way to win because I'm such a fan of his. But I just see as Santos getting a big victory here, a statement victory via knockout.
Whew, I love that we get the chance, Sean. We get the chance for only the second time on this card to disagree with each other because I'm going with Sodiq Yusuff here. I think this fight is fascinating for me because you said I would be surprised if either of these guys take each other down. I disagree 5 billion%. I think Sodiq Yusuff just got the blueprint from Francis Marshall. And let's be real here. Like, I thought Francis Marshall big time showed up, but I don't think he's a better fighter than Sodiq Yusuff, man. Like, please, guys, go back, check out those Mike Davis fights. Like, check out this guy's skills are there, and I agree he has fallen short. But I think it's against more veteran, savvy guys than this. I think although we've seen Diego Lopez find his way through the division with his dynamicism, I don't know, man. I don't think Myron Santos is going to be able to outcraft somebody like Sodiq Yusuff when you consider that they have very similar games, man. Like pressure wise, especially, I think Sodiq is the pressure version of Myron Santos. He wants to catch an angle on you, but making you go backwards. Myron Santos wants to make you chase him and try to find those leg kicks on you as you walk in. Sodiq Yusuff is chopping you down as he walks forward. And I think that's going to be the biggest problem for Myron Santos in this fight. Is sure, he's very good at keeping himself at range and keeping himself on the outside and landing shots and resetting. But in a fight like this, with somebody like Sodiq Yusuff that can mix it up, that, mark my words, will get top position against Myron Santos, then it becomes about in those exchanges what becomes more memorable, right? And I think Myron Santos certainly can add up damage with those leg kicks and put Sodiq Yusuff in a bad spot. But I think ultimately the moments of aggression from Sodiq Yusuff and the pressure is going to be the difference in this fight. I'm going Sodiq Yusuff, but man, it's close, and I don't blame you picking Myron Santos. I'm high on both of these guys, regardless of who wins here, unless someone just absolutely goes out there and implodes. But only time shall tell. We move on to the co-main event, Sean, where we've got Rodolfo Bellato minus 500, my dynasty guy, going up against Sean's former dynasty fighter, Paul Craig. I wanted him to be your fighter so bad. Plus 400. Now, this is my guy. I'll kick off the dance here, and I'll keep it short and sweet. This fight does not match the odds. It should be a little closer, but I'm going with Rodolfo Bellato. I think his physicality and brute nature, it really makes the difference here. I honestly found myself trying really hard to figure out how Paul Craig could find an opportunity to get a submission. And I think if past this prologue, it's never going to be easy to guess the way this guy can just magically find some shit to end the fight. But I think what really stuck out to me was I feel like the kind of guys Paul Craig has issue with are guys that are willing to pressure, aren't going to easily get hurt or stunned by your offense, and are willing to go out there and trade. And I think Hidalgo Bellato, if he's shown anything, hey, he's got a lot to learn in this division. I think he's still green. But I think this motherfucker has proven that you're going to have to not only kill him, you're going to have to bury his body and then burn sage over the top, right? Like you're going to make sure that this guy is done before he gets out of there. I still cannot believe that he squeezed out that draw against Jimmy Crute. One of the most insane fights I've ever seen, where I was begging the ref multiple times, round 1 and 2, like, please don't let Rodolfo die out there. This is my guy. He needs to learn for the future. And then he comes out there in round 3 and basically does everything but take out the man. So we got, if anything, a really exciting career to look forward to from Rodolfo Bellato. I'm a real fan of Paul Craig, though. I think despite not having the athletic tools that someone like Bellato does, I think he's really, once again, in every sense of the form, wrung the towel dry of his athletic potential in the UFC. And I won't be surprised if he continues to rack up wins, but I think this isn't the spot to do it.
Honestly, it sucks because I'm actually like a huge fan of Paul Craig, and I picked Paul Craig in my dynasty last year because when he moved to middleweight, he I forgot who he beat, but he had a really nice victory to start with the ground and pound, and then I was like, I think he was facing Brendan Allen next, and I think I had you had Brendan Allen or I had Brendan Allen, I don't remember, but it was one of those where I was like, you know what, I'm gonna bet on Paul Craig to be a humongous fucking middleweight here, but it just hasn't happened. It was the reason why he went to middleweight was because the towel went dry in light heavyweight. He was trying to find that last spark. He thought he found it, didn't happen, and I think we're looking at like a desperate sort of situation, run out the contract sort of fight here, where Paul Craig's still a very noticeable name you see on a card, especially in a dog shit card like this on a dog shit fucking place. So you could find a name like Paul Craig and throw him in a co-main, especially when you got Bellato, who is on the rise, and you can easily promote a up and coming light heavyweight. So to see Paul Craig here, where it's just a classic, this happens at least once a card. Older veteran, bigger name back in the last 5-10 years versus up and comer. And this is the fight where the UFC is praying that up and comer comes in and just fucking obliterates. I use that word again. The veteran and takes him out. And I think this is what the situation is. I don't know how many fights left Paul Craig has in the contract, but I think this one is all about his durability. I think his chin is extremely vulnerable and exposed now. I think this is one where the only way Craig wins is to find this, really dangerous submission and find a needle in a haystack sort of situation. Obviously, it's not that slim of a chance, but I think of it as he's got to find the right moment to go for some nasty submission and get Rodolfo out of there, because if not, I think Rodolfo's striking is way, way better, way more dominant than Paul Craig's ever was, especially now in 2025. And this one I think could be put away pretty early. And it sucks because, like for someone like me, I never looked at Paul Craig. I never looked at him in ugly. I never looked at him in a bad light. I've actually always been a fan of him. I like the attitude and what he brought to the UFC. He was always a stand-up guy. And, he was always, creative. Obviously, we all know about the face paint, going into the face-offs. He, brought a fan base to his hometown, and I feel like people always will love him for it. But you always get to that time where, your favorite fighter gets to that moment where it's starting to diminish. The career's starting to fall off a little bit. Things get quiet. And I think that's what the situation is, unfortunately. I'm a big believer in Bellato here, and I think Bellato finishes him Anthony Smith style, where Craig is done in the first round. And I had to throw Anthony Smith in there. I don't like Anthony Smith, and so I think this one will be done before the first round is over. If not, I think it would be nice to see this one go into the third, but I don't see it going past 5 minutes.
Yeah, it's going to be a tough one. It's going to be a tough one for Paul Craig. Now we have the pleasure of moving on to our welterweight main event, a division that has a brand new champion in Australia's own Jack Della Maddalena. What a damn performance that was. But we move on to this Hellscape main event, right? The one we really need to talk about, right? The one that we deserve to speak about. Number 8, Gilbert Burns, plus 575, going up against number 12, Michael Morales, minus 770. Sean, I love that you get to lead the dance on this one because you don't have any dynasty implications, so you are not biased. How do you feel about this welterweight main event at the Hellscape?
Honestly, this is my second lock of the night. I think Morales via knockout third round. Man, it sucks. It feels this is another one. It's another one of those fights where you have the up and coming prospect, super high in talent. The hype is there. Against a dude we all love, and we have seen him go throughout his entire career. And even at a time was at a main event for one of the biggest UFC cards ever until he got sick with COVID. Masvidal jumped in. Like him getting sick with COVID, like jump started Masvidal's like whole like uprise and like belief that he could be something. Like it sucks, man. Like it's so shocking to me when I see Gilbert Burns is 38 years old. Like I just can't believe it. I feel like I've been watching him for so long, but not long enough, right? If that makes any sense. And I like the people he's lost to in his last 3 are fucking killers. 2 of them are champions, and the other one's the number 1 contender. So it's not like he's gone out there and gotten his ass whipped by, a bunch of like middle contending people. Like, he's pretty good, but Gilbert should have beaten him. Like, Gilbert has faced the best of the best the last 3, and he's had decent fight in 1 or 2 of them, but he's gotten his ass beat pretty handedly in all 3. I would say, obviously there was the injury in the Bilal fight, which that kind of sucked, but it was like it's crazy to think that his last win was against Masvidal, and I think that was in Miami if I remember correctly. So it was like that was the Pereira Adesanya 2 card, which is crazy. Like, and I feel like that fight was so long ago, but it's just it like perfectly resembles him. Wins and losses perfectly resemble like the changing of the tide of the welterweight division. In that time, him beating Neil Magny, him beating Jorge Masvidal, like the welterweight division was like just sprouting. The names were there, but they weren't ready yet. But now, like beyond this fucking fight, the welterweight division has to be the best division in the UFC.
I agree.
By far. Like, you got 16 fucking killers. Really, like 17 guys.
And so many new guys pulling up.
All new.
So fun, yeah.
And you have the lightweight champion coming up to try to take the welterweight throne. Like, it is crazy how amazing this division has become. And you have one of the forefronts and one of the biggest names coming up right now in Michael Morales here. So for any of you that are watching this and are like, fuck that, I ain't watching this fucking dog shit Hellscape card. This card sucks. Like, watch this fight. Watch the changing of the tides turn. Watch what's the phrase? The
passing of the torch.
Passing of the torch. Thank you. This is that moment because Gilbert Burns was Michael Morales once upon a time. He was that hyped up guy coming into the welterweight division. He was the guy who trained with Kamaru Usman. That he's the guy that he's seen Kamaru's everything, every move. He could beat him. And then that the 3 title fight card that he got out of. Then he ends up getting the COVID title fight. He dropped Kamaru, and then he eventually got finished by all the jabs. Like the hype was there for Gilbert. And so this is really the passing of the torch fight. And, the co-main's kind of the same, but this is really like the highest of the highs of what Gilbert Burns was, and watching the slow fall off, and Michael Morales here just coming in and showing that he's real deal. I think people are talking about Sean Brady, JDM, Ian Gary, but Michael Morales is right there, and a win like this puts him probably in that top 6, top 7 now, and you could really start seeing at least like the top 5 of this division going at it consistently. And I was saying this off air, not even to you, but to all the people I talk to about this division. You could put any one of these fighters in the rankings and just outside the rankings in a fight, title fight. I don't even care, and that fight is a bang. And this is one of those fights. This is going to be a hell of a fight. I think, unfortunately, Michael Morales just goes in there, has way better cardio. I think he could take this fight to the ground. He'll have all the success he needs to. I think his striking is pretty good. I don't know how much power Gilbert Burns still has left. I'm not saying that it's gone because he's older, but I just think this is one of those where Gilbert has great grappling and submission himself, but I just think that someone like Morales can find this way to use this in 5 rounds as his advantage for once. And it's weird because you usually look at it as the veteran that has the better advantage in 5 rounds. But I see this one as Morales using his technique to push this fight into the later rounds. And while I still think this fight ends in the 3rd round, I think even if it goes to 3rd, 4th, and 5th championship sort of rounds, I am set that Morales will look even better later on. And if he can withhold the crazy onslaught that Gilbert's going to try to bring, because this is probably his last main event, I think this is one where it's a statement fight for whoever wins. And I honestly think it would be a complete shock if Gilbert could turn back the clock and beat someone like Michael Morales. So for me, I think this one is one of the easiest ones you could pick. Unfortunately, I love Gilbert to death, but I think this one is Michael Morales all day. And we are in the beginning of an incredible future, not only for him, but this entire division.
Whew. You gave me a lot to try to respond to here, Sean. So I love the analysis here, man. I'm gonna try to keep it short and sweet here. I think what's fascinating about Gilbert Burns' career is like you said, he's been around for so long, but we haven't got enough. And I think a big part of that is because we've seen 2 lives, right? We've seen the lightweight run and then now the welterweight run. And you look back and it's kind of crazy, right? You're like, man, you can't even really imagine Gilbert Burns the lightweight anymore, right? Like that feels like a different world from now. Come the end of Michael Morales' career, that might be the story for him in middleweight. I think this dude is huge for this weight class. I think at some point he's not going to be able to make it. Like I think at some point he's moving up. This dude is a physically imposing fighter in a way that's hard to remember for this division. Like I think we've seen some really special athletes at 170. This guy stands out because I remember when Jalen Turner fought at 170, and you're like, man, that's a really tall 170 fighter, but he's very skinny. You know what I mean? This guy is 170, extremely tall for the division, and just fucking jacked for the division, like insanely strong and physically imposing. And I think, once again, that's the best pace, if you ask me, for MMA, because if you could out-athlete your opponent, in some ways you can make up for the technical skills, because with technique, right, with understanding what you need to do with urgency, you can overcome some of those technical deficiencies just with brute strength. And I think that's what's going to be the tail of the tape in this fight. I think there's going to be moments where Gilbert shows his veteran savvy and is able to mix it up and puts Michael Morales in tough situations. But I think very similar to JDM and Bilal dynamic, I think once we hit the ground in those spots, I think he's just going to be able to out-athlete Gilbert Burns and just put himself in a position to stand up. Now, against someone who's as savvy as Gilbert Burns, that's a dangerous spot to be. That's why I think Gilbert by sub here is pretty live. I think a lot of people are underestimating his ability to catch a submission like that. I think some bookies had it like plus 1,800, and I think that's ridiculous. Like you could say that's probably his best method. It probably should be somewhere around minus like plus 500. So the fact that it's at that high, it's kind of ridiculous because if he's gonna win, you would imagine it's that way. But same story in my opinion as Paul Craig. I just don't really see the world in which his grappling gets him there. And man, this is a phenomenal fight because it's crossroads. But if Gilbert Burns wins, he brings himself right back in a position where he could contend in this division again before it's too late, right? Like that's why this fight is perfect, because even though we think if one guy is on the way up and one guy is over the hill, I think we've seen guys, especially in this sport of MMA, be able to defy the odds in that way. I'm not picking him to do it here. I'm going Michael Morales. I just think, like you said, it's going to be a finish by knockout. I think he's going to be able to find it some point in this fight. But I think, like you said, later, I'm going to go 4th round knockout. And I think this is going to be a very exhausting fight for both of these guys if it gets to where I'd like it to get. This can also be a very boring fight, I think. That's why I think it's interesting to see what Michael Morales tries to do out there, because I think, especially as we saw against Neil Magny, he's trying to put an exclamation point on these wins. So, Sean, I think we're done here. Do you have anything to say before we move on to the Dynasty part of the show?
Just the fact that the welterweight division is fucking so awesome. I've never been so hyped for a division in a very long time. I could probably talk 2 hours about the welterweight division. It's just that's how excited I am. So this is like if you guys don't know yet, this is a perfect like trailer / teaser / like opener to what this division is about to be and how young all these top 5 prospects are. Like we're seeing the end of the old regime and seeing the beginning of the new, and all these guys are super young. So we're going to see these guys fight each other consistently. Like we're talking about, this is Michael Morales, I think 7th or 6th fight in UFC. The kid's 24 years old, 25 years old. Like he's going to be around a long time. So man, this is going to be this is 2025 is such a good year for this division, and man, it's only going to get better.
You heard the man. I couldn't have said it better myself. And now we move on to the best part of the show, because I'm going to keep it simple and sweet. I'm the first pick of the draft for the Hellscape. And of course, I'm going with Melquizael Costa. Give me the head-to-head, goddammit. I want all the smoke. So no analysis, no response. I'll hop back in if you'd like. How about that? Because I know it takes you a while to think about these things. So let me just.
This is one of those,
fill the space.
This is one of those times. It's tough. It's tough for me because I want to take someone, but I don't know if I can believe in him yet. And there's another one that's just too raw for me. But I could use a victory because you have a lot of fighters. And the way this is looking for me, Luana's tough. Park, I have Thiago. I could go 2-1. I'm probably gonna go in the 2-2 range. I'm gonna probably need a victory here, and I don't like it. I don't like that I have to do this. But hopefully this guy only fights one more time this year, and then I can put him on my list to cut potentially. So give me Del Valle to steal a victory. And then maybe he'll probably fight one more time, maybe 2 more times. Hopefully it's not terrible and I could steal maybe one more victory, but I have this on the list.
Yeah, I'm not mad at it. I think he's a great prospect in the division. I don't know why you want to cut him so quick. Just a little
because
undersized.
It depends.
A little undersized.
That's the thing. It's I feel like he's a little too raw for me right now. And you can getting a victory, getting a fight like Conor Matthews can really, promote him and make him, obviously whatever. I think he's 8-0, 9-0. It's like that's great. But then once you get your first real test, you're either gonna, rise to the occasion, or you're gonna fold. And then it's all a mental thing. Like you could be the best. I've said this fucking 5 times already. You could be the best of the best, but it's who you are in here that defines whether you are a good fighter or not. So he's on my list for now. But if like I said, if he can win 2 this year, then I'll keep him.
Yep. It's a great shout. I like it. And I'm excited to see how this all plays out. So just to give you the dynasty landscape and the head-to-heads, we agree on every fight except I'm picking Tainara Lisboa. Sean is picking Luana Santos. I am picking Sodiq Yusuff. Sean is picking Myron Santos. Everything else is the same. And now for our dynasty fighters, I am packing Michael Morales, Rodolfo Bellato, Sodiq Yusuff, and Myron Santos. So I'm already 1-1 this week. Nursulton, Ruziboev, Tainara Lisboa, Denise Gomes, Tecia, Pennington, and Melquizael Costa, while Sean has Julian Erosa, Thiago Moises, Luana Santos, Hyunsung Park, and now Yadier del Valle, the phenom out of Cuba. And just like that, we got another episode in the books. Once again, you guys, thank you so much for showing up for us the way you have, man. It's been an awesome month, and we can't wait to continue to build on that by showing you our mettle, showing you our toughness, continuing to push through like we always do. So make sure you're locked in so you never miss all the dope stuff we got coming your way. And the next time you're upset, right? The next time you're in your bag, you're like, fuck, man, like it's been hard. Like, I don't know how I'm gonna get through this week. Just remember the name. We'll see you all next week. Bada bing.